Data as an asset. We've all heard this phrase that data is the new oil and data is the core asset of the 21st century digital corporation. In spite of that, it's kind of surprising to me as to how few people really understand what this data is, why it is important to businesses, how large is it, and why is it growing this fast. This is what I want to talk to you about. I guess the best way to start is to start with my personal experience with none other than Facebook. If you think about it, Facebook was really amongst the earliest companies for whom their asset base was entirely data, your data. And I got first involved with them back in 2008, and they were still a sort of private company. They were already very well known. They already had over 100 million monthly active users. And my guess is they had about a couple of hundred petabytes of data at that point in time. And the reason I know that is I got involved with them as they were deploying over 30 petabytes of commercial NAS to host the first versions of Facebook video. Fast forward about 4 years, and now you have a business which is very well known, that's got close to 1 billion monthly active users across the entire globe. And I know for a fact that they had over 200 petabytes of essentially commercial NAS, and that was a small fraction of their 2 to 3 exabyte of data set. So what was this data? Well, it was all our data that was being used by Facebook in a variety of different ways. Today, if you look at this business, it's very well known, extremely controversial, large company, large valuation, and my guess is they're easily over the 100 exabyte range in terms of amount of data that they have. The question is, how does this relate to regular, real, everyday businesses? Because we can all agree that Facebook is not a common business, so how does the lessons of Facebook apply to everybody else? Life sciences, for example. Until recently, in fact, even today, if any one of us or your loved ones were to be impacted by cancer, you have surgery. In other words, you cut the tumor out. Number two, you have a chemotherapy. In other words, you poison the tumor, or it's radiation therapy, which is sort of essentially burn the tumor. And that was impactful with regards to quality of life, quality of results, and just overall extremely painful and unnerving. And the reason things are starting to change is we are today in the very early days of personalized medicine. In fact, today they will do a couple of things which are very different. Number one, they'll sequence the patient completely. Two, they will conduct a biopsy and sequence the tumor itself, and then match the treatment for the tumor to that particular individual. And you've got the beginnings of extremely personalized medicines with new drugs in the last 2 or 3 years which have been approved explicitly based on the genetics of the tumor and the patient itself. Again, what's this got to do with data? Well, the reality is all of this has been possible primarily because it's data which drives life sciences and drug discovery. It does not matter whether you're talking about life sciences upstream research, which involves sequencing and proteomics and high-resolution electron microscopy, or it is drug discovery with computational chemistry and other programs, or it's downstream clinical care, which requires an enormous amount of data in terms of fMRI images, sort of PACS imaging, if you will, which is the basis of patient healthcare, drug discovery, and treatment today. This trend affects all industries. Let's consider something like the automotive industry. It's been around for over 100 years, and it's completely being revolutionized by the presence of data, primarily machine-generated data. When we think of modern vehicles, we think of course, Tesla, we think of Mercedes-Benz, but it's not just them. It is about the next generation tractors and farm equipment coming from John Deere, and it's coming from folks like Caterpillar. It is the businesses like Bosch and Continental and Delco Remy, which are essentially supplying the automotive industry, and these businesses are over 100 years old. And if you look at what's happening in this segment, because of high definition sensors on vehicles, because of connected vehicles which generate up to 10 terabytes of data per week on a constant basis that you keep around forever, you're looking at petabytes upon petabytes of data. In fact, we've had businesses that have been around for over 100 years, and even 10 years ago were looking at hundreds of terabytes of data across their entire businesses, are now looking at hundreds of petabytes of data going into the exabyte range, and these guys are really struggling with how to go manage, deal, store with, and monetize this data. Another example would be in the geospatial imaging world. We have customers and their business, their entire business is flying planes, essentially dozens of flights per day and 6 to 9 months per year, and these planes carry extremely expensive equipment which is going to map the surroundings, the places we live in a variety of different spectrums. They are doing LiDAR mapping, hyperspectral imaging, and all of this generates data, about 20 terabytes of data per flight, and this is data that is kept around again for a long periods of time. So you might ask, why do people care about this data? Because it's this data that is used, for example, to determine what's the corn crop going to be in Iowa next year, because that's the way you're going to look at this data and come to that decision. It's also the sort of data that is used, say, for example, by FEMA to decide what area to go evacuate when they have a natural crisis, whether it is volcanoes in Hawaii or it's going to be sort of floods on the Gulf Coast. And this is stuff, again, that is retained forever. So if you look at this, does not matter what industry we are looking at, they are all awash with data, where a decade ago you're looking at terabytes of data, now you're looking at petabytes to tens of petabytes to hundreds of petabytes, even exabytes of data sets, billions to tens of billions to literally hundreds of billions of individual files that are all valuable. They are machine generated, and it is software running on compute farms which actually process this. This is the world of really large scale data, which is the true asset of most of the businesses today. If it is not the asset of a business, it's soon going to be for every single business. Otherwise, that business is going to be not really relevant in this new world. When we walk into these businesses, we find that every enterprise, every large sort of owner of data, if you will, has a lot of systems on which this data lives. They have systems from vendors like Dell EMC, from NetApp. They have new systems from folks like Pure Storage or Cumulo. They may even have some completely deprecated systems like Oracle ZFS. Oh, by the way, they're also leveraging clouds, usually more than one, sometimes more than two of the three major cloud providers. And they have data in all of these locations, and it's growing in all of these locations, and workflows and usage span across their entire globe. So it's essentially a complex mix of data, systems, locations, a variety of vendors, and a variety of clouds. So how does a business make sense of this and effectively and efficiently monetize it? They need to be able to see and understand data across their entire footprint, and we can help them. Igneous can help them with that. We have a solution called Igneous Data Discover that's actually available on AWS Marketplace as well as on Azure Marketplace, and it allows our customers to scan all of their data across all of their platforms and have a single pane of glass to understand what they have where, how is it changing, who is having maximum amount of data, what are the things that are being accessed, what's not being accessed, and so on. For example, we can show customers that about 60% of the data that lives on their expensive tier 1 storage has not been accessed or modified in over a year. It is still valuable, it is still useful, but hey, can that be present in a different location which is much more cost effective for the business? Which leads to the second point what we ask customers to do, which is optimize their infrastructure, which means having the right data at the right place at the right time. And we enable that with Data Protect, which is another SaaS offering, again available on all three marketplaces. And this is something that enables the customer to go protect that core asset that they have, one single way of doing it across all of their platforms, to be able to leverage either the public cloud or their own private cloud infrastructures to be able to go ensure that they have an optimized infrastructure. Now, the reason to go evaluate and optimize your infrastructure is really all about improving data agility. Because at the end of the day, if you are going to go monetize this data as our customers want to, It means getting this data into the hands of the people who can make most sense of it, whether it's the engineers, the researchers, or it is the traders in the case of high frequency trading, quickly and effectively, and that's what we're here to enable them to do.